Chapter 2, Factors of Foot Marches. The factors that generally influence the conduct of the march of the location enemy forces, nature of the terrain, weather, and activity of the enemy. Aviation contact with the enemy should be expected, and from any direction with the non-protected friendly forces, terrain barriers. One factor that commonly affect the conduct of the march include distance to be marched, planning effectiveness, march discipline, supervision, time available, the physical condition, training status, and attitude of the soldier. 2-1 tactical consideration. Soldiers should not be required to walk until they enter battle. Form the point of on. They should be required to carry on all what they were weapons, ammunition, water, and minimal rations. Moving forces protect the items itself. Moving forces protect itself against enemy action with the use of all around its security elements, which must be employed during all times of the type of the movements. The security forces provide the earlier warning with enemy threats and recognize the range in the IAW mission and enemy capabilities. As ground contact, the enemy becomes imminent in large units with the normally perceived with the covering forces operating directly from the senior command, with the covering forces are self-contained tactical until the developing situation seize keys. Terrain features defeats the enemy resistance. Typically, divisions or larger units of covering force. Each column commander even perceived that the covering of the force, the established advance guard with the mission of protecting the main body with the surprise, ensuring the uninterpreted advance flank, rear guards operating directional under the column commander, protecting secured flanks. Before beginning the march, the routes should be countered, marked, and bridge capacities indicate the dimension underpass compared with the vehicle dimensions. If tactical situation permits, the timely measure are enforced with the reduction of obstacles and other possible causes of delay. Combat support assets are located with the column quick with availability of units. They are not immediately required, but they can be held with the rear and sent forward with the situation dictates. Situational loads and non-intermediate need with the combat can be left in the old area, moved forward from the movement of the troops. Essential equipment is supplied with them and completed. Each group with the movements corresponds with the organization of the combat, include weapons, ammunition, rations needed for the combat and at the destination. D. Shuttle marches move to conserve the energy when they are insufficient vehicles to move with the entire force of the time. The troops are transported with the vehicle and later echelon can march from the intermediate point where they are picked up with the vehicles, return with the earlier echelon, foot transportation, early echelon, and the disembarkment shuttle short of the destination march of the rest distance while the vehicles return to later echelon. Plans for the combined foot and motor movement must be flexible since the circumstances in forward areas are easily disrupted in that time schedule. When matching the when marching to occupy an assembly area with the commander, the conducting the march and infiltration, the marching of the vehicles are on foot. Small groups extend over the time of the give them the impression and over the casual traffic. The technique is used to provide secrecy, deception, dispersion in areas where the enemy observation attack is likely. It becomes required for the time not to detailed plan, greater decentralization with control. When the possibility of the contact enemy ground forces the remote principal object facilitate expedited the movement to conserve the energy of the troop, the columns consider for the units that have same rate with the movement that having the different rates of the movement assigned with the separate routes for the movement if the staggered along the same routes. When unforeseen crossing of the two columns occur with no control personnel with the higher headquarters are present, the senior commander regulates the crossing based on the situation of the mission of the two columns. 2-2, the effects of weather and terrain. The various type of the terrain other than which troops march with the present different problems with the commander depending on the specific areas of operation with the condition combined with the terrain affect for the mobility of the marching troop. The foot marching under the adverse climate conditions follow the same principles under the normal conditions. The difference depends on physical limitations imposed with diverse conditions that use special equipment to overcome them. Restrictions imposed with the weather extreme and terrain constitute the major change of the operation interpret areas and temperate areas. The restriction can present major obstacles to the successful conduct of the operation unless proper provisions are established. Movement in many of the areas of the world must be calculated in terms of the time, the distance problems, and how much time needs to go from one place to the other, and the distance between them. They apply for the mainly Arctic mountain jungle areas of travel where trails are limited to non-existent, where the cross-country movement can be slow and arduous. 2-3 March discipline. March discipline includes observation, enforcing the rules within instruction governing the unit of the march, which includes the formation distance between the elements, speed, and effective of the concealment of the cover. This also includes specific control restrictions such as water, light, noise, communication disciplines. Much discipline is in culmination of effective training, which results in enthusiastic teamwork among all the soldiers of the unit. Water discipline. Water discipline must be observed by all the units of the measure to ensure the best health. Marching efficiency, the following rule will be adhered to. Drink plenty of the water before each of the march aids is sustaining during the movement. Drink only treated water from the approved sources. Drink water often. Water should be consumed before, during, and after the march. Drinking small quantities of the water rather than gulping rapid intake. Drinking water even though not thirsty. Drinking water slowly to prevent cramps and nausea. Avoid spilling water refills canteens to every opportunity. The human body does not operate efficiently without adequate liquid intake. When soldiers engage in strenuous activities, excessive amounts of water, electrolytes are lost through perspiration. The more water is lost for the normal body function. The respiration, urination, which can create a liquid imbalance in the body. As a result, dehydration could occur unless loss of immediately replaced by the soldier's rest before the continuing with the activities, deficiency liquid and salt intake during the hot weather can result in heat injuries. The danger of high dehydration is prevalent in cold regions, as in hot air is drier. The difference in hot weather is soldiers are aware of the body lost liquid and salt with the hot through perspiration. Cold weather, when the soldier is bundled up in many layers of clothing, has difficulty knowing the conditions exist with the perspiration is rapidly absorbed and the heavy clothing evaporated without air rarely visible over the skin. Salt food compensation. Daily salt with the requirement additional intake of salt should be under the direction of the supervision physical efficient assistant. Pure water that is not available. The water canteens can be treated by adding a water purification Tampa Seafield Manual 2110 for methods of purifying water. If the unit is forth with the transverse communicated aerated nuclear MBC. Due to the tactical situation, water consumption increases and the force of dehydration becomes necessary. Leaders at all levels must be prevented that heat injuries brought by the physical activities in the MBC environment. 2-5. Acclimatization procedure. Soldiers must be physically, mentally conditioned and effectively participate in foot march of the many types of the terrain climate throughout the world. Require the different acclimatization procedure for the successful operation. Ideally, troops should be trained to operate only in areas of minimum preparation. However, each over there has specific requirements that must be before operating in it. For example, the schedule of the operation mountain would normally participate in high altitude training from 10 to 14 days before engaging in full-scale mountain marches. Physical adjustment eliminates preconceived notions of fears of specific location, climates, and training. Conducting logically, realistically caused most of the soldiers to lose previously held fears of the height and cold and isolation. The adjustment of facilitated by educational programs that gradually introduce soldier to the uniform terrain feature of the climate. During this program, soldiers are encouraged to develop the confidence until they can operate in the areas where they seize assurance. The self-confidence in each of the soldiers is a direct result with the effective psychological adjustment. Therefore, the soldier can benefit from the training since they believe in their ability. Self-confidence of the foot marching, the development of strong leadership progressive training. Soldiers become stronger in the marches. The technique learned and applied with the soldier. Self-defense coincides. Confidence and pride increase. Leaders can stimulate the pride in building up the unit and instilling the determination to succeed. A well-planned, well-conducted march is an excellent way to develop and demonstrate many attributes with a good soldier, good leader, good unit. Note, the specific adjustment factors techniques are discussed, but the field manuals relate to the Arctic motion of mountains and desert jungle operations. 2-6 morale. Morale can greatly affect the marching effectiveness. Jupiter morale can continue contagious and magnificent with any discomfort the soldiers might experience. Leaders can improve the morale by applying proper marches. Leadership techniques, some of which are discussed here, provide adequacy, pride advance, and warning with the march to the units. So that the troops prepare adequately. More time should be allowed during early training. Do not form the unit too early. Hold formation early enough to allow the time to inspect troops and perform last-minute checks. During the march, avoid delays with the key. The soldiers standing. The delays increase the fatigue and cause the leg stiffening, making it more difficult to resume march. Reconnaissance before the march provides the information on the conditions that could cause delay and advance action that can prevent them. D. Prescribe Describe maintain steady rate of the march to rapidly too slow rate induced fatigue during the march. Hold the passing vehicles responsible to speed promote safety to prevent dust, rocks, and mud from being thrown on the shoulders. Dust condition to offensive more of the troop thumb upwind the side of the road. Do not allow the trucks to overtake the column that you for the transportation stragglers and marching casualties unless it is unavoidable. Ensure the soldier to rear of the formation receive the full-time break time. Ensure leaders in the echelons are march within the soldier throughout the duration of the march. Soldiers quickly detect the presence of absence for the leaders in a foot march. Encourage the unit leadership to walk in length over the marching until they periodically spot check the soldier performance and well-being to ensure the command is present and observed. Ensure availability of adequate water to rest and stop throughout the march. And 2-7 individual loads. To prevent individual loads from hindering the march for the soldier mobility of the combat readiness, commanders must reduce the carry load to minimum mission essential survival equipment. Individual combat load with the mission essential equipment is determined by the commander, which is required for the soldier to fight to survive. Immediately combat operational load can be divided in approach, march load, fighting with the load. Lighting load should not exceed 48 pounds, but the approach of the march load, which includes the fighting load, should be less than 72 pounds based on upon individual's ability. The primary consideration is not how much the soldier can carry, but how he can carry without impaired combat effectiveness, mental or physically, the combat strength. Unit can be counted solely on the number of the soldiers, but must be counted by the number of the willing of the physically able soldiers. Soldiers must be exhausted quickly under stress for the combat, therefore they must be required to carry less for the battle with the condition to carry during the training. The soldiers should also be contained for carrying very heavy loads that should be equipped with in combat to move swiftly. The individual load must be based on gear and supplies needed to meet every contingency of the commander should not accept his soldiers to carry enough gear all of the possible combat situations. Instead, items to be contained in the load must be based on realistic expectations. The commander is responsible for obtaining the means of the carrying additional gear. Usually a rifle company, small size of the unit requires one truck, one trailer, and support to carry the additional gear in cold weather during the other conditions. Whether the personal gear increase the commander must ensure that the supply system provides balanced essential supplies, equipment that are not carried by the unit. Soldiers must feel confident in their needs will be met. And training commanders must instill pride in their soldiers operating and using austere conditions. Soldiers should be trained to field craft techniques that use cache and field expeditions. However, the commander must set the standards. Know that see Chapter 5 with the detailed discussion of soldiers' load management. Chapter 3: Movement planning of foot marches.